You've been there before. We have the meeting. Everyone agrees. And then after the meeting, the real conversation happens in the hallway. How many times have you been there before? In fact, most meetings just simply ignore good ideas. And the question is why? Why does this happen? In many cases, it's not a problem with the people in the room. It's actually a problem with the way that meetings are structured. And for most of us, we were never really taught how to have a good meeting. We've been plagued by bad meetings ever since we can remember going to meetings. Here is the common recipe for a bad meeting. Here's how to have one. And I know you're like, Pierre, I don't need a reminder on how to have a bad meeting. But just in case you do, here's that reminder. And I put bag meeting. Okay. Yeah, because some of these meetings, you actually just want to put them in a bag and throw them away. But bad meeting. Here's what a bad meeting looks like. We get info. There, in many cases, is an idea, something that somebody's working with or they're already thinking. There's a little, I'll put a little talk or a little discussion, but not serious discussion about this idea. And then we agree because we want some consensus, and then we move on. Now, here's the problem with info, idea, this little bit of conversation, this agreement or consensus, and then this desire to move on. It really, really creates this common occurrence of what I like to call the meeting after the meeting. You know, because you've been a part of it before, where the team gets together and maybe the senior leader, the person in charge, isn't a part of this conversation. But there's this talk. This won't work. We have this talk that this won't work. But we don't have it in the meeting because it wasn't psychologically safe to have it. We don't have a culture of pushback or serious contribution. We're just trying to get into it and get back to the things that are really, really important to us. And why does it even matter if we have the conversation? Because you're just going to do what you want to do anyway. And those meeting after the meeting conversations, they take place in the hallway. They take place in the parking lot. They take place in DMs and text messages. They take place in Slack channels. This meeting after the meeting where people finally express how they really feel. Now, here's what happens a lot of times. Companies, even organizations now, they're talking about innovation. Everybody's talking about AI and how AI is going to really transform the workplace. And we're rushing to use a technological advancement while at the same time trying to keep our old ways of doing things or our old mindset around doing things. And when we want to have serious conversations, we hit a brick wall. I know you as a leader in some of the organizations that you have been a part of, you hit this brick wall. And I call this brick wall, I simply call it status quo. We talk a good game, marketing campaign looks slick and smooth. Yeah, we're all about it. But when push comes to shove and we're actually in the space where we have to make different decisions, we revert back to, well, here's the way we've always done it. And it's really tough as a leader in the middle. As a leader in the middle, you have senior leadership above you. You have direct reports beneath you or people who are on the front lines who are closest to dynamic parts of the work that you are looking to explain this to. You're looking to make sense of it yourself, and you're looking for things to eventually be different. Sometimes we actually have the idea. We put it on the flip chart. We do the sticky note thing. It is a very productive and exciting conversation for a couple of hours or a half a day. But then when it comes down to execution and transformation, when it comes down to the messy part of it, we roll up the flip chart, we put it in the storage closet, we forget about it until it's time for the next retreat or the next offsite or the next excuse to get together. I'm reading this book called Facilitating Breakthrough by Adam Cahan. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. And it's been a really insightful book. I've pulled out a few things over the past several months in facilitating sessions that I found to be really, really helpful, to be really, really insightful. And Adam, in this book, he talks about really this sense of a productive strategy. If we really want to have new outcomes, if we want to leverage a new strategy, we want to come up with new ideas, we need a framework for that. We need a framework for developing productive strategy. And in most cases, the meetings that we have, the bad meetings that we have, they are not set up to be truly productive. So this is what Adam talks about in his book, Facilitating Breakthrough. Talks about these three stages to develop productive strategy by leveraging these important conversations that sometimes we skip, or we skip a core component of them. Now, these three stages of conversation. The first one, Adam in his book, he calls it diverging. And in this phase of conversation, we're all familiar with this. We walk into a meeting, we walk into a conversation, and the data is there. The experience that we bring to the table is there. The opinions that we have, they're there. And in some cases, there's always, in some cases, there is an idea that maybe the senior leader has already, and they're looking to simply run with this idea. And this is where the bad meeting culture comes in. Because, hey, here's the idea, here's the little conversation, here's the place where I want you to agree, and let's just move on. Now, in this diverging space, in the framework, we need to bring the data. We also need to hold the space for the various experiences that people are bringing to the table, and also the opinions as well. One of the things that's really difficult for us sometimes as leaders to navigate is that people will have different opinions than you, and that's perfectly okay. There is this third part of the framework. We're actually going to facilitate breakthrough and have productive strategy conversations that we're used to this part too. It is the converging piece. Now, at this stage of the conversation, this is where we conclude. Here are the conclusions that we come to. And here are the commitments that we're going to make. Now, remember in the bad meeting scenario, the experience and opinions, in many cases, those are kept in our heads. We get the data, we get the idea, the thing we want to work with, the idea, or the thing the senior leader wants to work with. And then it's like, hey, everybody agree, everybody commit. But we've seen from our previous conversations that committing, that head nodding is really just so we can get the meeting over with. And then afterwards, We go into the hallway, the parking lot, the DMs, the text, the phone calls, and we talk about why it doesn't work. We skip this stage. We go straight from diverging to converging, and we skip a critical stage in productive strategy or productive strategy conversations. We miss the emerging. And the emerging is actually where the new happens. In the emerging, once we bring not just the data, what people's experiences, people's opinions, and we bring them together in a way that creates something that we did not have before. Because here, Adam talks about here in the emerging space, in the emerging segment of the conversation, the data, the opinion, the experience, the perspectives, the positioning, it needs to collide. Not in a bad way. It needs to collide in a productive way, in a helpful way, in a way that we can see that, hey, we're approaching this from two totally different perspectives, two totally different backgrounds, different disciplines, different experiences. And let's bring that together. Let's disagree. Let's be in productive conflict, and let's create something that we've never had before. Now, I get it. Many of us in our organizations, we say, hey, our organizational culture, like, this is what it is. And I can't nudge the big behemoth of an organization. What am I supposed to do? Because my organization does not foster a diverging, then emerging, then converging process that leads us to be in a space where we've bought into our conclusions and bought into our commitments. What am I supposed to do? Well, you may not control the culture of your organization, but you absolutely, positively have an impact on the culture of your team. And because of that, I really want to challenge you as a leader to protect in your meetings with your team, protect the emerging segment of productive conversations. Create a psychologically safe environment or atmosphere where people can bring not just the data, but they can bring their opinions, they can bring their perspectives, they can bring their insight, and they can bring it to the table in a way that collides with what other people are thinking, how they're feeling, in a healthy, in a safe way, so that from that mix, I love how Adam puts it in the book, converging happens really well once people's perspectives and opinions and experiences, once they've had time to cook. And they cook in this emerging phase of productive strategy conversations. So I know you're not in charge of the big organization, but you are in charge of how your team navigates conversations. And because of that, hold space to diverge, to bring the data, experience, opinions, and perspectives together. Hold space to emerge where those things can collide in a healthy and productive way, and hold space to converge. Once we've navigated that messy middle of emerging, we can get to the place where we've bought into our conclusions and where we're settled into our commitments. Because if we rush time and time again, you know this from your personal experience, if we continue to rush from diverging to converging, if we continue to rush from one perspective or a limited perspective to decisions and we skip the messy middle, we don't get alignment. We get compliance. And we'll continue to have the real conversations in the parking lot, in the hallway, and in the DMs.